Well, hey guys, it's Coaster. Doing a little bit of a tutorial here. I noticed people are really having a hard time landing on Growling Sidewinder's PvP server. And honestly, I think that's a problem. I think if you're going to play this game, you should be very proud of how well you can land an airplane. Think of it as like parking. Have some pride in it. Nah, all jokes aside, if you just want to go back and get into a jet, that's fine. But if you do want to get good at landing, I hope that this tutorial will help you a little bit. A little bit on my background. I am a commercial pilot. I am not a fighter pilot. These are just things that I've kind of picked up on and also read about how pilots actually land an F-16. And from what I understand, landing of an F-16 is very different from an F-18 and so on and so forth. Basically, the Air Force and the Navy have two philosophies on doing it. So today we are going to cover the Air Force. So right now I'm pretty loaded down. I have not a whole lot of fuel, only 3,800 pounds, but I am absolutely loaded down with missiles and bombs. I guess practice bombs, I don't know. We're here in our free flight in the Marianas, and kind of the first thing I want to cover is how these jets operate, I guess. And it seems fighter jets operate on two main flight regimes, and that's AoA, which is my indicator right here on the left of the nav ball, and G's, right? So up there just to the top left of the airspeed tape, if I pull back, I can pull and hold about 4 G's, right? And if I want, I can go full burner, and let's try to hold about 7 G's. There you go. Right. So that's the way I understand fighter jets work. If you want to max perform the aircraft, you pull until you hold 9 G's. So that's kind of the idea. Well, when you're landing, AoA is kind of everything. And there's a couple things you need to look at on your HUD, and you need to really understand what they are. If you already know this, I would skip ahead, but we're going to have an explanation of what that velocity vector is right there in the center of the HUD. That velocity vector is where your aircraft going. So I don't know how many people have looked through like a red dot sight on a firearm, but I want you to notice something. So if I put this over this little brown patch of ground right there, right, and I hold it there, no matter how I move my head, that velocity vector stays put. Most of you probably already know this. I hope y'all do. If I hold this velocity vector right on that piece of land, my aircraft is going to go right there. That is where your plane is actually going to go. So at the very least, if you need to land, oh, this is a little airstrip too. I didn't even know that. Huh. But the idea is if you want your aircraft to go somewhere, just put your velocity vector on it, right? So that's kind of the first step, is putting that on the touchdown point. Now we're going to explain a little bit of what angle of attack actually means, okay? So you'll see a little plus right above my velocity vector, right? I can almost just right above and to the right of it. That is kind of like the attitude indicator right there. That is showing where the nose of the aircraft is actually pitched. So I'm going to actually start pulling back the throttle, okay? And we're just going to slow down. I'm actually going to help it by pulling some G's, and you'll watch the speed slowly bleed away. And we're going to try to get this jet roughly in the regime that you would if you're landing. Now, it's also important to realize that the F-16 and most fighter jets don't have a landing speed per se. It's different based on how heavy the aircraft is. So don't see people coming in landing fast and think that they're too fast. If they are at the right AoA and on the right glide slope, they are exactly where they need to be. So just trying to slow down a bit more. So I am below 250. 300 is the gear speed, so I'm going to go ahead and put down the gear. And you'll notice that the nose kind of comes forward a bit and the speed keeps bleeding off. So this is your velocity vector. This is where your aircraft is going. These two dashed lines is your optimum glide slope marker. This is where you want your touchdown zone to be, right in between these two dashed lines. And this is your angle of attack bracket. The top of the bracket indicates where you want your velocity vector through final approach. And the bottom of this bracket basically represents a tail strike. Not quite, but definitely don't want to be that far low. And this is in reference to where your velocity vector is at, by the way. Alright, so now I'm at 200 knots, right? And I'm maintaining altitude, but that little bracket down there, that is the top is, I believe, 11 degrees of AoA, and then the bottom bracket, I believe, is basically a tail strike. So if you touch down at the bottom of that, with your velocity vector perfectly at the bottom of that bracket, you're basically going to be tail striking. So the idea of this is you want to get your velocity vector in the end of the runway at that 2.5 degree marker. So something like this, right? And then you want to pull the throttles back to idle up until the E bracket climbs. Notice how I'm having to pull more and more AoA as the jet slows down. And then once the jet gets to where it needs to be, now it's all throttles. And you're pumping the throttles. If you need to climb, you add more throttle. And if you need to descend, pull the throttles back. This is a constant maneuver. You're constantly pumping the throttles back and forth to maintain this AoA and this glide slope. And the idea is you want the touchdown zone of the runway right on the end of the velocity vector. So I'm going to overfly midfield. I'm about 1,000 feet. And we're going to give this a shot. So this is definitely not a standard practice by any means. And I'm not trying to say it is. But we're at 1150. And we're going to remember that. That's baro altitude. And that gives us about 1,000 feet of radar altitude. So we're just going to maintain that. And I'm just going to maintain 250 knots. Nothing crazy. And I'm going to kind of rip around the pattern here. Again, this is non-standard, so if you're looking for a standard way to land an aircraft, this is definitely not it. This is just how to put her down nice and soft. Alright, so I'm going to keep her at about 1,000 feet above the airfield, which is about 1150, so we're up 50 feet high. Nothing crazy. And essentially I'm going to wait for him, or for the end of the runway to get to my wing. Oh, and by the way, guys, this is way easier in VR, just so you'll know. So if you're struggling on a Track IR or Tobii eye tracker, just understand that this is actually way easier in VR. So it's about to get the tip of the missile. And we're gonna go ahead and we're actually gonna start our 2.5 degree descent. And we're gonna start worrying about getting on our AoA. And I'm just checking just to make sure. Looks like we need to come around a little more, and we might be a tad. Actually, we're looking pretty good. So I'm more worried right now about keeping on that 2.5 degree glide slope than I am worried about AoA. We'll get on AoA. We overshot just a little bit. And as you can see, I'm a little low because the 2.5 degree glide slope marker is below my touchdown point. So I'm going to give it some throttle. That's looking pretty good. Throttles are at idle right now. I'm slowly pulling back. And this is the exact position you want to be in. The velocity vector is right in between the 2.5 degree glide slope marker, and the velocity vector is right at my touchdown point, and the top of the E bracket is even with my velocity vector. This is the exact position you want to be in as you go into the flare, and this will set you up for a nice, smooth, soft landing with a good rollout. And now I'm using just my throttle to keep it perfectly on the touchdown zone. Now, as I go into the flare, I'm going to keep a little bit of throttle in, and I'm just going to keep pitching back, and a touchdown. And now we just use our rudders, and now I'm pumping on this stick, okay? I'm pulling back and then letting off, because if you do this too much, you will tail strike, and then let off the stick, nose wheel steering, and lightly apply some brakes. And guys, that's pretty much it. It takes a little bit of practice, but I think once you understand the concept of holding AoA in the glide slope, you'll be making. I do not want to go to the parking area. Yeah, hopefully this video helps you, and you'll be making some smooth landings. And guys, if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And hopefully I will see you guys in the next one. See ya. And I just made an unauthorized landing. This is real life, especially in Guam. It'd probably be a flaming ball of metal.